Now, whether you're coming from another system or this is your first time playing Pathfinder Second Edition, these are the top 5 things that you really should know while playing Pathfinder Second Edition. We're not going to go over the exact verbatim rules in the book. We're just going to give you an overview of the things you should know in a general sense when you're playing the game and things that are going to come up probably the most often when you're playing. So let's start with number 5. It's going to be the 3-action system. It's probably what makes Pathfinder Second Edition the most different from most other things. It's the first thing that most people try to say, convincing people to play. It's what is all this about the 3-action system? Well, every character on their turn, usually in combat, gets 3 actions. They can do whatever they want with those 3 actions, and then their turn ends, and then everyone gets their 3 actions, including the bad guys, the monsters, and then we start all over again. So on your turn, you can use any of the 3 actions. Now, certain abilities or feats or spells use more than 1 action. So you can have an action that takes 1 action, 2 actions, and even 3, your whole turn. You can even take all 3 actions. So you just know ahead of time how many actions that you can take on your turn, which is going to be 3, unless some effect is affecting you. Generally, it's 3. And you're allowed to take 1 reaction during the entire round of combat. So from the time your turn starts to the time your turn goes again, you're allowed to take 1 reaction. Reactions usually have triggers. We're not going to go into the specifics, but it just says you're responding to something. So most characters don't have reactions innately. Some of them do get them based on their class. Some of them can take them as feats. Sometimes you even get them as your ancestry. So you get 3 actions and a reaction. And they're also free actions, which you can take as many times as is reasonable. But those are more uncommon than the reactions and the 3 actions. So we can take a look at power attack over here. We're going to put that up on the screen right over here. I'm going to pull up my fighter. Well, he's dead now, but I'm going to pull up my fighter. He had power attack. He was cool. Power attack is 2 actions. So during your turn, when I say, I'm going to power attack that guy and hit him with my axe, you just know that that takes 2 out of your 3 actions in that turn. Like I said, a lot of this text, this is stuff you'll eventually learn, how to make strikes and all that stuff. But just know that you have 3 actions on your turn. You can kind of do what you want with them based on what your character has access to and based on what you're trying to do. The second thing we're going to talk about is DCs, or difficulty class, and proficiencies. They're kind of related. Any given character is going to be good at certain things and not so good at others. The fighter is going to be better at attacking things than the wizard's going to be, and the cleric is most likely going to be better at knowing all the stuff about religion than the barbarian. It's just a matter of figuring out how good you are at a thing. And if you're having to figure out what a DC is, which comes up from time to time, how do you figure that out? I'm going to lay it out here. Here are the different proficiency levels. There are 5 different proficiency levels in the game. You have untrained, trained, expert, master, and legendary. The difference between these is that untrained, you have a +0. No matter if you're a 1st level character or a 20th level character, you have a +0 plus whatever relevant stat you're talking about. So if you're a wizard and you are untrained in athletics or acrobatics, you have a +0 plus your dexterity modifier. If we're talking about acrobatics. That's all you have to do. So no matter how high a level or lower level you are, it doesn't matter. If you're untrained, you get a 0 plus your stat. Your proficiency is your level plus your trained value. Now, start trained, that's +2. Expert is +4, +6 for master, and +8 for legendary. When we're trained in acrobatics, so we're level 5, that's 5, +2 for train, that's 7, +2 for our dexterity, that is 9. So we are +9 in our acrobatics. Say something is happening to me and they need to roll against my acrobatics DC. Everything can be turned into a DC in the game. And how you figure it out is you just add 10 to that bonus or that penalty. So going back to that example with a wizard, if something is rolling against us and they're trying to beat our acrobatics DC, That's a 19 they need to beat. That's a 9 plus a 10 on top of it. The 10 representing the DC, the difficulty. How difficult is it to beat my acrobatics? If you yet again talking about wizards, spells have DCs, and depending on the type of spells you cast, depending on how good or bad you are at those spells, if you can even cast them at all. Most classes, even classes that don't cast spells, all classes have a class DC. Not all classes use it, but for the most part, the classes use it. So we're playing that fighter, we're playing a 5th level fighter, and I have an ability that says, okay, well, I hit you with this ability, and now you have to roll a check against my class DC. Well, if I'm expert on my class DC, same thing. We're 5th level, and the fighter's class DC is based in strength. So let's say we have +4 strength, and we're a bit stronger as a fighter. So we're level 5, so that's 5, and we're expert, so that's +4. That's 9, plus another 4 because we're strong. That's a +13. Well, it's +13, but we don't really roll our class DC. So remember, we're adding 10 to it to make it a DC. That's a 23 DC. So we do something to a person. Yeah, we're going to show an example here for a fighter. Let's see, we're going to put one up right here called Dazzling Blow. Basically, what Dazzling Blow does is you have someone grabbed and you're beating them up to try to stun them. So when you use this ability, remember, now going back to the first thing we need to know, it's one action. So that's handy to know. The second thing is that we make a strike against someone who we have grabbed. So we grabbed somebody. So we grabbed the guy and we're beating him up. And now, if we hit them successfully, they have to roll against our class DC. So remember, whatever your proficiency is, plus your level, plus whatever relevant stat you need to add, that's your proficiency. To make it a DC, you just add 10. Now, the third thing is more on not rules specifically. This is more of like how you've built your character. There's a lot of skills in the game, and there's a lot of ways you can use a lot of the skills in the game. So that's a lot for any one person to kind of memorize in their head. So my suggestion is know how to use the skills that you feel you're good at. And if something comes up but you don't really roll this one skill all that often, it's okay to go ahead and look it up. But you should get a handle and get used to using the skills that you're going to use all the time and how many different ways you can use those skills. If you're the wizard or you're the knowledge character in your group, know how to roll all the knowledge checks and what you need to do and what you're going to get out of it for those knowledge checks. If you're the fighter and you're going to be constantly, or the barbarian, and you're constantly rolling athletics to trip people, to grab people, to swim, to climb, to doing all the physical stuff, know how that works. If you want to be the rogue that constantly intimidates or lies to people, and you want to use deception or intimidate, know how those work. And especially if you're going to be probably taking skill feats, know how those feats affect your skills. Because some of those feats will either give you bonuses to certain situations, or they'll let you use the feat. Those feats will let you use skills in a way that bends the rule of the game. That if you have this feat, it lets you do this thing that you normally couldn't do with this skill or that skill. Case in point, Intimidating Glare. And if I took the Intimidating Glare feat, that lets me use intimidation. And even if the person doesn't speak my language, I don't have to speak to them. I just got to look mean. Urgh. So that lets me bend the rule of we have to share the same language, the demoralize or coerce, which are actions that you can use. And know that there are certain skills, there are certain actions within skills that you have to have a certain level of training or proficiency to be able to use. So on Intimidate, you can do anything, even if you have a penalty to your Intimidate. So there's nothing in Intimidation that holds you back from doing it. You just may not be good at it. But we'll take a look at Arcana, and it's almost predominantly trained only. Meaning you have to be trained or better to even try to do all the other stuff that's in Arcana. There's Arcana, there's religion, occult, nature for primal. They all operate very similarly. So if you're like I said, you're the knowledge person in the party and you need to know how to use these skills. Just kind of know it'd be real easy to get a handle on maybe the 2 or 3 skills that most characters are going to have that like, oh, these are my go-to skills. You may have more skills that you're trained in, but really know and really get down the rules on those ones that you're going to go to time and time again. Kind of going back to the proficiencies, and anytime we're rolling dice, we're adding a bonus or a penalty to that. Okay, so I'm a fighter and I got plus 10 to my attack. Okay, well, where did that plus 10 come from? We figured that out in the proficiency. But we're eventually going to get a magic sword. We may be under an effect of a beneficial spell. These may adjust these numbers. I may be able to scare my opponent so they have a penalty. The types of penalties and bonuses really matter. There are 4 types of bonuses/penalties that you can apply to any role in the game. And the 4 types, let me look at here, is circumstance, status, item, and untyped. So some of these are more common than others. So circumstance is some circumstance or effect is affecting the person. So you and her ally are flanking the troll. Because you're both on opposite sides and you're making it harder for the troll to defend itself, it is flat-footed. That gives a circumstance penalty. All you have to know is that when you have a penalty or a bonus, multiple bonuses or penalties of the same type do not stack on top of each other. You can't get double flanked. You can't have 2 circumstance bonuses of +1 or -1 to your rolls that will affect it. You only take the higher of the 2. So if you had a circumstance bonus of +1 and a circumstance bonus from another effect giving you a +2, you're going to take the +2. You're not going to add it to a total of +3. You're only going to take the highest one out of all of them. But you can stack different types of bonuses. So you can have circumstance bonuses. Like I said, you're flanking with your friend. Status bonuses mostly come from spells or magical effects. They can also come from conditions, whether beneficial or detrimental. Statuses come a lot of statuses come from conditions, and some of them are also circumstance bonuses. But being frightened is a status. It's not a circumstance. It's not an event that's happening. You're physically scared, so you have a status on you of being frightened. So that will lower all of your rolls by the amount that you're frightened by. Then we have item bonuses. That's pretty self-explanatory. An item is giving you a benefit. You have a +2 sword. You have a +1 armor. Those are item bonuses. Yet again, if you have a +2 sword and you tape another +1 sword to it, it's not going to be you can't add multiple bonuses to the same roll. Now, you have magic armor. That's going to increase your armor class. You have a magic weapon. That's going to increase your weapon attack roll. Those are separate because they're 2 different die rolls. One of them is a die roll one of them is a DC that's adding to your armor class, and the other one is a plus to your weapon attack as you attack with your weapons. So a lot of times you're going to have multiple item bonuses adding to different things. So sometimes you have an item that lets you add to a skill check. So you just got to make sure that you're not double stacking the same types of bonuses. And the last one is untyped. Now this one is pretty uncommon in the game, but a pretty common one is the Barbarians Rage damage bonus. So when a Barbarian rages, they get an increase in damage and among other effects. But the bonus on damage is untyped, meaning it stacks with all other bonuses. You can add a bonus and a penalty of the same type to the same roll. So meaning that if you have a +1 circumstance penalty, but a +2 circumstance bonus, they both add together to give you a total of +1 over whatever you're rolling. But the same thing with bonuses, if you have 2 penalties of the same type, you only take the worst of the 2. So if you had a -1 circumstance penalty because of some effect, and you're also being flanked, which gives you a -2 circumstance bonus, they don't add together to be -3. You only take the worst of the 2, which is -2. But you're going to have, at lower levels, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th level, you're not going to have too many bonuses. Penalties are going to come up with conditions and the like. As you get higher level, you're going to get more sources of bonuses, and you're going to have more likelihood that, like, you get a class feature that gives you a status bonus to some role, but also someone just casts a spell on you, which gives you a variety of effects plus a status bonus to that same roll. So just got to make sure that when you're adding things together, you're not adding the same bonus or the same penalty to the same roll. Number 5 is multiple attack penalty. Now, this is going to be more for your martial-based characters and less so for your spellcasters, but even the spellcasters have to deal with this. Remember, the first thing we talked about was you have multiple actions. You have 3 actions on your turn you can do. Now, you can attack 3 times. If something's standing next to you, you can just go to town and attack it 3 times. But attacking 3 times is also to put a limiter on that. The more you attack during your turn, the more penalty you're going to accrue when you're attacking. And this is for anything with the attack trait. So some spells have the attack trait, and we didn't even talk about traits, but for the most part, the attack trait is important for this example. Anything with the attack trait will generate multiple attack penalty. Also, a lot of things that athletics, tripping, shoving, grappling, they all have the attack trait. So it's just something to watch out for. But the first time during your turn that you make an attack, you make the attack at whatever listed value you have. So if it's plus 10, you have a plus 10 to your attack, you roll, whatever you roll, it's plus 10. You decide to attack again. You roll what you roll, but you're going to take a minus 5 penalty on top of whatever you rolled. So your die roll plus your plus 10, minus 5. Because, like I said, you have momentum you're dealing with, the person's moving around, they already know the attack's coming now. So that's to represent that. That's what the minus 5 is for. So the first attack is at full value. The second attack is going to be at a minus 5. And the third attack is going to be at a minus 10. So minus 10, we went from plus 10 to 0 as our third attack. So there's a high likelihood that attack might miss. When it comes to spell casting, only spells that have the attack trait are affected by this. So some spells don't have the attack trait, but they still may damage the enemy. So you're just going to make sure, for the most part, it's any time that you roll a spell attack roll, which will add to map. A lot of times they're 2 actions, so you don't have a third action, but maybe you have a crossbow at the ready. And you fired your spell, you did a whole bunch of damage, then you plinked with your crossbow. That's going to be a minus 5 because your spell was first attack and your crossbow was the second. That's a minus 5. There are weapons that are specifically designed to attack better multiple times, and they're called Agile Weapons. So instead of taking that minus 5 for your second attack, you're only going to be at a minus 4. So you're saving a little bit there. And for your third attack, or anything after that, instead of being a minus 10, you'll be at a minus 8. And talking about that, there are a few occasions where you might be able to attack more than 3 times. Once you hit minus 10, or you hit the maximum, which is your third attack, so once you've hit that minus 10 or minus 8 if you're using an agile weapon, there's no more increases in your penalty. You can just keep hitting at the minus 10 or minus 8. You can keep swinging for as many actions as you have. Monks is a good example of this, because monks have flurry of blows, and so that's 1 action to make 2 attacks, and then they can attack 2 more times. So they can attack 4 times during a round without anyone else helping them. And that's not even including being hasted or any of these other effects that may give you more attacks. So this can even happen at very early levels. So multiple attack penalty is something that most marshals are going to have to deal with most of the time. It's just something you have to keep in the back of your mind when you're making your attacks. So to recap, remember, every character gets 3 actions and a reaction every turn. Know how proficient you are in something, and remember to make it a DC, all you have to do is add 10 to whatever your maximum value is for that skill or that saving throw or that class DC. Know what skills you have that you're going to be the most common and know how to use them, and especially know what kind of training level is required to even use some of the actions that are inside these skills. Know the 4 different types of bonuses and penalties that it can apply to any given role, which is circumstance, status, item, and untyped. Untyped being the most rare of those. And know how to use the multiple attack penalty and how it accrues during your turn. Now, a rule that some people forget, which I didn't mention before, is that reactions, for the most part, unless it states it, are not affected by multiple attack penalty. There are a few of them. There are a rare few that say it uses whatever your current multiple attack penalty is, but that's the exception, not the rule. The rule is if you're making an attack roll as a reaction it's at your full attack. And if you have a rule that you would think that someone should know when they're first starting out playing this game, whether they're converting from another system or they just picked up Pathfinder out of the blue and started playing it, leave it in the comments below. But this is Steve from Nothing Venture Nothing Game. May all your die rolls be crits, and may you always roll max damage. See you later.